Hi everyone, Annette Ornelas here, Southwind Designs. This is our very first episode 1 of Quilt Snacks, a new program that I'm starting on doing just little tips and tricks that hopefully will make your quilting easier and just fun stuff, answering your questions, introducing new things, just all things quilting related. So right now I've got it set up for Wednesday. Hi Jen, how are you? I've got it set up for Wednesday right now. So Quilt Snacks, the goal is to have it every Wednesday at 2 o'clock. I figured that would be a good time because mine is 3. I'm here on the East Coast. A good time for that because then the West Coast, has a chance to watch it and people on the East Coast have a chance to watch it. So hopefully that'll work out. I'm going to give it a try as there are so many new things I'm trying these days. But thanks, Jen. Yeah, everything's going well, except I'm just busier than ever, it seems, right now, with all the Facebook Lives and everything else I'm doing. So, but it's all fun. It's all good. So, hi, Glenda. So let me get started on some of the things. I've posted on the Southwind Inspirations group what kind of batting, is everybody like. And so, hi, Cheryl. And so I've got some batting out and I wanted to show you what I use and what I have used and what my thoughts are on that. And I realized that everybody has their batting that they love, and that's fine because, if you have success with something, then you're probably going to, do that again and again. But maybe it doesn't just depend on what you do one time. Maybe batting has a little something to do with the results you want for different projects that you're doing. So I've got a pile of things piled up here to show you, and I'm going to turn this around so you can see some of the stuff I've prepared. All right, it worked. So here is my pile of batting, and I realized these are all scraps. So this is warm and white, and that's something I use a lot because it's white and I can use very light fabric and nothing will shine through. And I don't know if you've known that, but there's different types of batting. There's batting that is needle punched, and there's warm and white, warm and natural, like Hobbs Heirloom, Quilter's Dream, Orient Blend. I think they're all needle punched. And what that means, there's actually 2 sides to your batting, and I was hoping that you can see it on that white. There's a side that looks a little more fluffy, and there's a side that looks a little smoother. So this is the side that should be against your quilt on the warm and white, and this is the side that should be against your your backing. So it just is needle punched in a certain direction, so when you start quilting, you should go in that very same direction that the batting is needle punched. So sometimes you can get information on what kind of batting you're using and what the properties are, so to speak, by getting those things that come off the roll. And if you don't tear them up like I do sketches on mine, then you can probably read what it tells you. It tells you about shrinkage. It tells you all different kind of things. It tells you if you can pre-soak it, which I do sometimes. And just in general, the information on there pertaining to the batting, it's worth reading. It really is. So let me tell you what I use warm and natural for. And I prefer warm and white, I have to tell you right up front. And the reason for that is because warm and natural has these little dots in here. Can you see them? They're what I call trash. And sometimes they even have seeds, probably not as much as they used to, but they have seeds that even can leave little oil things on your quilt. Some batting does. I don't think warm and natural has seeds, but it has little what I call trash, little bits and pieces. So I prefer the warm and white. And what I use that for, if you're a beginning quilter and you haven't quilted a lot, warm and white is a batting that I recommend to my beginning quilters because you don't really stretch it out of place. It holds its shape, and once you start quilting, you can quilt probably 8 inches apart, which I don't recommend, but you could quilt 8 inches apart and still have a really good result. I use it for anything that's a table runner or I want to hang straight on the wall. So if I use it for a table runner or a placemat, I actually pre-soak it and put it in the dryer because if I know I'm going to wash something a lot, like placemats especially, I do like to pre-shrink my batting. So this is my warm and white and warm and natural little samples. I think I'm just going to throw them here on the floor. And then I have other batting as well. This is kind of a little thicker batting, is also warm and natural. And you can see how much thicker it is as opposed to something like this, which sometimes the quilters dream requests different sizes and different thicknesses, is for different projects. So when I have a quilt that I sleep under, I don't necessarily like warm and natural or warm and white because it's sort of board-ish. So I prefer something like a blend. I've done Hobbs Heirloom, the 80/20. I've also done, which was really nice, the Tuscan Silk blend. I've done that for my husband. It's a little bit warmer. And it was a dream to quilt. It really was. I don't have a scrap of that left that I can find. But I really like that. And something that's a little more drapable is better when you're doing bed quilts. Also, if you're hand quilting, warm and natural may not be your first choice because it's harder to put your needle through. And it's worth taking a needle to the quilt store and just kind of going in and out of the batting and see how that feels if you're a hand quilter. So some of the other things here, this is a poly, and you can see polyester is mostly bonded, not needle punched, and it doesn't have a right or wrong side. So if somebody tells you batting has a right or wrong side, that is true insofar as it's needle punched. If it's bonded, it really doesn't have a right or wrong side, and you don't have to worry about what is towards your quilt and what is towards your backing. But let me move along here. And where did I have something prepared because I wanted to show you how I actually join batting together. And I put everything in one pile, and there you are. Okay, this is it right here. Okay, so I've been playing with a new thing called Quilter's Dream Fusible. It's an 80/20, and it actually has a scrim on there, which is a fusible, and you can see the shinier side. And I actually fuse it onto one side of the quilt. I fused it onto the back ones and then put the quilt on top. It was okay. The last time I used it, I quilted underneath on the back of the front of the quilt, and then that had really good results and no puckering whatsoever. I don't think I would use it for a huge quilt because I don't really know how I would press it on there, to be honest. But for smaller projects, that was really fun to use. So now I've got some stuff here to show you what happens. So this is a very thin batting, and this is one of my alphabet letters. And you can see how compressed you can get that. So loft is a big thing in batting. It used to be that you had a loft when you had, like, polyester batting was a lot thicker than the batting we use now. And if you use that now, it tends to look a little bit dated, I think, because that was how it was many years ago. Most everybody likes to have the flatter quilts, the cotton look. And so, these are just some of the samples on how thin that can get. And then the other one I have here is one of my mini Mexican stars that I haven't even published, but this one has a warm and white on there. And it's a little bit thicker. And you can see on the back, I like the fact that the back, I just did the ditch and I quilted and peeled back those corners at the same time. And that thing is almost quilted. I'm just going to go a little bit on the outside and maybe do something in here in those little corners. And there's really no excuse why this shouldn't be quilted, but, stuff happens. So let me show you what else I do. I use batting whenever I make pillows. This is one of my pillows that I made when I did my letters. So this is the Christmas version here. It says Joy. But what I do is I put scrap batting on the back of my pillows and quilt it. And I save my scrap batting for stuff like that. So there's two versions of that. And that's quilted and curved at the same time. So that's what that looks like. And in the back, you can just see, you can actually quilt on batting without having a backing. It's pretty neat, huh? And then I put a backing on it when I make the pillow. So this one is a table runner I did with very thin batting. Right now I use a batting called Airlight, and it's very, very thin. Can you see that? It's not always as easy to work with as something that's a little sturdier, but if you're a quilting teacher and you travel, it pays to have more stuff in your suitcase. I mean, people want to see what you've made, so if I can fit 20 quilts in a suitcase with very thin batting, I'm going to go that way instead of having in there maybe only 12 that I can fit in there. So I've switched to this very thin batting, and you know, you've learned to quilt with it, and it works really well. And I'm not going to wash this little table runner because it's a sample. So here's something I've tried. This is actually fusible fleece. Have y'all worked with that before? That stuff is poofy. Can you see it? Can you see how poofy that is? I don't know. I'm trying to hold it up into it. So that was when we did row by row, and that was one of the row by rows I had developed. And, you know, kind of a Carolina Lily adaptation. But you can see when I quilted that, it was kind of neat because everything was really indented where the quilting lines are. So that was kind of fun. And that was fusible fleece, and I wouldn't use it on a big quilt, but something that hangs on the wall. I think it's kind of nice to have it kind of come up like that. So here's the back, and you can see I haven't even cut all my threads yet. So another sample that I found, I went digging here to show you all the different kind of batting. Have you ever seen a black batting? There is a poly batting that is black, and the thought was because polyester batting can beard, which means it kind of can come through your fibers, they developed a batting that is black. I don't know if you can see it here. And so the intent is that you don't have that problem, because if you have a dark quilt and you have the black batting, you don't have any problems. You don't have any of those little white little things. I have white things on there because guess what I use my batting for? Little batting scraps that I have left over. When I start cutting my threads, I just place that on top, and as I cut, I put the threads on here, because honestly, once I cut the thread, I would never find it on the black. So this is Fan Flower Table Runner. I have it published in different colors, but you know, sometimes I go a little wild and crazy and make too many samples. So that is the poly, and it's black. So here's another example on quilting. Two things quilted with the same batting, look completely different. Let me see if you can see it. This is the Green Tea Table Runner. It's one of my simplest things. And I didn't do a lot of quilting in there, and I think it's enough. There really wasn't, I mean, the quilting lines are spaced sufficiently apart, I think, but there just wasn't anything else I needed to do. And the same batting, that's the warm and white, I used on this table runner, and I did a whole lot of quilting. That's the Victorian table runner. So you can see it looks completely different depending on what you do. So let me see. Boy, my floor is getting full. Another thing I do, when you get your quilts back from the quilter, in case you don't quilt them yourself and you quilt by check, that happens. I do that too sometimes. I cut off the edges, and I cut them all down into 2 1/4 inch slices. I use 2 1/4 because jelly rolls and stuff come in 2 1/2, and if you ever make a rug, you can put that on there and fold the edges in, and it's completely enclosed, and you don't have to fuss with it too much. So I cut these all into 2 1/4 inch strips, whatever I have left. And so that's what I use a lot of my batting scraps for. So here is a little sample I made when I wanted to test out thread. So that's another thing you can use batting for, your scraps. And a lot of times before I do a whole quilt, I will do a little test run and see what happens. So let me, here's my 2, 1, 2, yes. Okay. So what I've prepared for you is how I join batting, because we all have a lot of batting scraps. I think you do, and I do too. So I'm going to show you how you can join batting and make your batting bigger, which is kind of economical, but sometimes when you can't run to the quilt store, as in right now, it's a nice little trick to do. So what I do, let me see if you can see that. I have two pieces that are about the same, but that's just because I'm showing it to you. And what I do is I layer one on top of the other, and there's about inch and a half, 2 inches overlap. If you want your line to be invisible of where you joined your batting, you can't really cut in a straight line. You can do it, but it might be visible. So one way to do it is to kind of cut it in a curvy line, not too much and not too little. That's called a wallpaper cut. And so I'm going to move the top of this strip and the bottom of this strip and then fit this together, and that's called a wallpaper cut. So what else can you do with that? There's batting tape now that you can use, and you can just press it on, and sometimes you might have to cut it because now it's curvy, but it's worth not having a straight line that's going to kind of fold your quilt at that same angle all the time. So I use batting tape, and that works really well. Or, of course, you could use a zigzag stitch that is three steps to the left, 3 steps to the right. So I think that works really well to make more out of your batting. So I hope you learned some stuff about batting. And I noticed that a lot of people used wool batting, and I don't have too much experience with wool batting because I just have always had rolls of batting of other things. So I haven't used too much wool batting. So I don't want to say, the only thing I know about wool batting is that it kind of adjusts to your climate a little bit. And what's nice about wool batting is that you don't crease your quilts like you do with cotton. But let me show you, if you've followed along for the Healing Hearts quilt along, I'd like to show you one of the designs you could do inside your heart if you want to do free motion. So let me move my camera over here and see if I can make it to where you can see a little bit bigger. I'm trying to, there you go. Okay. Oh, I'm just reading what y'all are saying. Batting scraps from mug rugs. Yes, that's true. And look here. I save those for all kinds of different things. And I just cut things down to the size that I can so I can use them. But mug rugs is true. Okay. So here's my little thing that I use to collect threads. Okay. So what if you have one of those hearts and you wanted to make a pillow, and you wanted to do something other than maybe quilting in the ditch, which of course you can quilt in the ditch. Can y'all see me? Can y'all see that right? Okay. I'm just looking. Okay, so you're going to start on one end. This is kind of what I dreamed up, but I'm kind of into spirals, so I'm going to start here in that corner, and I'm pulling up the bobbin thread. And then when I have control of both threads, so I don't have a mess on the bottom, I'm going to start stitching into the spiral. And I like to clip my thread, and guess where my thread goes? Right here on my batting scrap, so it doesn't migrate back onto my quilt anyway. So I'm going to go around and so I've decided I wanted spirals. So when I do a spiral, I want to leave enough room when I go in a spiral that I can come back out of the spiral. So I left enough room here. So now I'm going to go in the next one. And I kind of know what the middle is. Pretty easy because we have those little the corner of those pieces where they come together. And then I'm coming back out. So that's it. It's pretty easy. And you could quilt all your hearts that way. Now, I would probably use thread that matches really well and kind of do all my purple ones, and then I do all my other ones. And then I would also go all the way around my heart with a light gray or whatever background color you have, and just kind of outline it. And then you can do maybe some wiggling in between. There are so many things that you can do, and I draw a lot on paper. So this is my test heart that I did. And I decided that this one I did clockwise, and this one I did counterclockwise, and I kind of like the counterclockwise better. It seemed to flow easier for me to do it. Can you see it? Let me see what that camera does. No, here we go. Did you see the actual stitching? I hope so. Okay. All right, so that was my little episode 1 of the Quilt Snacks. And next week I'll think of something else. And if you have any questions, please put them down. Ask me questions on Facebook. I get questions by email, everything. It'd be fun to know what you guys, have questions about, so I can make more episodes and show you different things. So I hope you had fun. And I will see you next week, 2 o'clock, Wednesday. If that works for everybody, I hope it does. And I hope you all have a fantastic week. And stay safe, please. What kind of machine? Oh, that's a Q20. That's a Bernina Q20, a sit-down machine. And the tape is called batting tape. Let me show you what it looks like. It actually is called batting tape. It joins batting. It's made for that. Thanks, Jen. But it's probably a little shinier. This one is a tape that looks just like it, but I ran out of batting tape because I used it so much. But it looks exactly like it, so in the camera you probably can't tell the difference. That one is a different kind of tape. It's just basically a stabilizer, a very thin stabilizer that you can iron onto your batting. Okay? All right, I'll see everybody next Wednesday, 2 o'clock. Stay safe and hope you all have fun quilting. Thank you all. Bye.